Hi and welcome to BRStv Live. My name is Jesse. I'm with BRS Fresh and I'm here with my saltwater friends, Jason and Will. You probably know him from some past videos here on BRStv. But we have a very special guest with us today, and actually we are right here live on scene at the Minnesota Zoo, sharing some really cool things with you guys today. Abbey is in charge of the corals here at the Minnesota Zoo, and she's gonna tell us a lot about that tank that we have behind us and a couple other things that are gonna be pretty cool coming up. So with that, Abbey, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you become in charge of the corals here at the zoo?
Like you said, I am the coral aquarist here at the Minnesota Zoo. I actually started as an aquarist by doing aquarium maintenance professionally for a local maintenance company. So I've worked on a lot of tanks in people's homes and offices and everything. And so I've seen coral tanks from the public aquarium standpoint and also from the private standpoint.
Very cool.
That's awesome. So this tank behind here is one of the ones that you take care of. It looks a lot like a normal hobbyist reef tank, but this is in a public aquarium. Is there any difference in terms of maintenance or taking care of this tank that you have to face versus being a public or private tank?
It's not very different at all. It is a little bit larger scale than what a lot of people are used to. The display is 400 gallons and the total system volume is 600 gallons.
Right.
So it is nice because we have the infrastructure here to like plumb our saltwater lines for water changes to the tank and things like that. But fundamentally, this is all the same equipment that a lot of hobbyists are used to and that we all have used.
Do you have any favorites in here that maybe you wanted to show us, point out?
I have a lot of favorites. One of them that comes to mind is right behind me. I have a Scripps Stuber Stag, which was donated by a local member of the reefing community.
That's
so
awesome.
It's really cool that we were able to kind of share like that. And it has a special place in my heart because a long time ago, I was taking care of a coral tank that was one of my first really successful tanks. And it had a beautiful like Scripps Stag right in the middle. And it's just always been a favorite of mine.
I love their crazy growth patterns. It's so awesome.
Now, to Will's point, a lot of these corals are really well established. How long has this system been running?
We've had corals at the Minnesota Zoo for a little over 20 years now.
Wow.
This tank behind us has been running for about 8 years.
Wow.
And that's the total system run time. Earlier this year in January, we did actually do a mini reboot on the tank because things had become very overgrown and we're starting to have some coral warfare that we're kind of used to seeing. And we had some corals in here like some palithoas that were becoming difficult to remove. So we spent about 3 days kind of pulling everything out throughout the day when the public was here.
Oh, wow.
And so they got to see that process and cleaning rocks up, replacing rocks with some new rock work and kind of getting everything replaced so it has a lot of space to grow for many years to come, hopefully.
Wow,
Awesome.
so 8 years is a really long time. Majority of home hobbyists struggle to get to that first year mark and then second year mark. Can you share maybe some of your secrets to success here?
I think one of my biggest secrets to success isn't a secret. It's consistency. It's planning ahead to make sure like everything's going to have space and making smart choices about which corals might grow super fast, which corals are going to be fraggable, and we can work with to moving forward. One of the exceptions to that is certainly our turbinaria here. It is a great example of a coral that's really hard to frag. So it had been growing pretty much up against the window before we did our renovation, and the skeleton is so dense we couldn't clip it the way we clip normal corals in place.
Sure. Right.
So during our renovation, we actually pulled it out, and when a lot of people think about cutting corals with our beautiful little diamond saws,
Right.
that was not going to work with that behemoth. So that one we actually had to cut with a sawzall.
Oh, that's crazy.
Wow.
It must have been super thick then.
Yeah, it was really thick and it was very difficult, but it is doing great now. And we used some of the pieces that we trimmed off to create a little bit of a tiered effect. And I think it's going to be great for a while.
So yeah, we use the term dinner plate. This is what, Will, 2, 3
The
times that?
dinner platter. This thing's massive.
That's the whole table.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, obviously when you were doing the restart of the system, you're in a public space. you've got to take that into account. It could be also educational for people, but which is cool and for everybody to watch. But obviously, there's probably some unique challenges that you might face here keeping a system like this and doing all the things that a hobbyist would have to do, but under the considerations of the public, right? What are some of the challenges that just being in a public space, possess or give you here?
One of the challenges that a lot of zoos and aquariums face is having a lot of people around. We have a lot of CO2 in our areas, and really busy days, we do see an effect of the parameters of our tanks, specifically the pH. So there's a lot of different ramifications that happen, but it's just one of the ways that we have to handle our tanks that a lot of people aren't familiar with. We sometimes use CO2 scrubbers, and in some cases, when possible, we really like to run intake lines for our skimmers from the outside, and that's an amazing way to keep everything stable.
So on that note, I do see that you have a bunch of acros, but I see a bunch of little frags as well. Mm-hmm. Are these new acros that you keep adding, or how do those come about?
We have added some new corals in the last year or so. It's just something that we're always going to do moving forward. They're just from some of the local suppliers that a lot of people use. That's
awesome. That's great. Do you have any favorite fish? I know we mentioned a favorite coral. You mentioned before this big lobo. This is actually my favorite in the tank. But I noticed my favorite fish was the mandarin dragonet you have in here. You told me a little bit about it before, but that is the healthiest dragonet I've ever seen. How'd you get it to be that way?
So he is actually trained to eat frozen, but he hasn't always looked amazing. He's gone through periods where he does lose weight and he looks a little bit thin. I usually adjust my feeding of the tank in that case, but it's, I think, important to point out that this is a 400-gallon system, and still it doesn't always have enough for him to graze off of. So all tanks are different, but he can be affected by that.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, well, he's absolutely beautiful. Hopefully he comes out and we can check him out a little bit. Is there any other issues that you faced with this tank? I know you said you did a restart because of all the palithoas and some other maybe invasive corals that you had. Are you running into any currently that you're facing on the tank in this current iteration?
No, everything's been going pretty well. We had run into some hair algae late last year, and that was part of what we were hoping to fix with the restart. And between changing kind of how I was feeding and doing water changes, and interestingly enough, I'm actually feeding a lot more than before. Okay. And that is, I think, really helping keep the bacterial colonies in the tank really, really healthy. Right. And by we've added a little bit of cleanup crew, but nothing significant. We've really gotten that under control, and it's great to see.
Definitely. It looks like a super clean, perfect, healthy tank. Looks really stable. I was really surprised to walk in here and see just how crazy established the tank looks. It looks really great.
Thank you.
So we can clearly see here by the shimmer, they're using LEDs. How do you have the setup? So I know you probably have a large viewing window with the guests. Do you measure the PAR, or do you just go off knowledge from maybe previous aquariums or your previous experiences?
Yeah, we do measure the PAR in here. I keep it in mind whenever I'm placing corals and moving corals around. I do like to kind of play with what's possible with PAR, and some of the corals in here are placed in ways that a lot of people wouldn't normally place them. Because I want to keep the growth patterns of the corals kind of varied throughout the tank. I don't like just having branching corals up top and encrusting corals down at the bottom, which you see a lot of. So, for example, we mentioned this big lobo here, and it's getting about 400 PAR right now, which is what a lot of the corals up at the top are getting. But I also have placed my Setosa way at the bottom, which I thought was kind of a strange choice, but I'm pretty pleased with it.
That definitely seems to be working out.
Yeah.
That lobo in 400 PAR, I think most hobbyists would say that that's not possible. You can't do that. But it's growing amazingly. It's growing really fast. It looks like you can see it kind of billowing out of its skeleton there. Is there any secret to that? Are you dosing anything, any additives to make it grow so well?
I do feed live brine shrimp a few times a week, and I have started to add phytoplankton. But
Okay.
otherwise, I feed the pretty typical mysis shrimp that a lot of people feed. And
Right.
Speaking of Lovo and all the other corals, the growth is insane. I know it's been around a long time. What do you dose? What do you use to keep them so healthy?
We actually use a combination here. I do have a calcium reactor on the tank, and I have a 2-part dosing method that I use to kind of supplement it and just make sure everything stays really precise.
Awesome. Definitely like a nice simple dosing method. I love calcium reactors. You just kind of set it and forget it. It makes it really easy. Awesome.
So this is incredible, obviously, what you've done here, and what's super cool about your background really on the hobby side and taking care of tanks privately. But I understand from our previous conversation that you've got something pretty exciting coming up like next week, right? What's going on?
So we're partnering with the U of M, and I'm traveling down to Curacao to Carmabi, a research institute that does a lot with coral down there. We're excited to be there for a big coral spawning event where we are targeting, I think, 3 species in particular to hopefully collect some gametes from. We're going to be present for the collection process and do some fertilization and settling, hopefully. And we are going to learn a little bit about the U of M's work with gene banking. So they actually are a cryopreservation lab that is going to be working on like freezing the sperm and eggs from coral and hopefully some larvae too. So we can preserve genes, and helps us moving them around. If 2 different facilities are trying to do some fertilization, one has sperm and one has eggs, they can actually share those materials.
That's awesome. So the Carmabi lab is obviously world renowned, and it's a pretty awesome opportunity for you to be down there. And are you going to be able to bring any of that learning back here and apply it to things that you're going to be able to do moving forward here at the zoo that you're not currently doing?
Yeah. So hopefully I'm going to be learning from some of the best with collection and fertilization. And I am hoping to come back, and in the future, we're really hoping to do a lot of spawning and in our own systems.
Yeah, well, that would be awesome. And if you don't mind, we'd love to have you back on when you get back. I know you're down there for 6 weeks, was it, or 3 weeks? How long?
It's 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay.
Awesome.
You wish it was 6 weeks, but
Yes.
so when you come back, I'm sure you'll have pictures and all sorts of stuff and some really cool experience. We'd love to have you back with us. You can join us in our studio over at BRS, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about that trip.
I love that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us here. It was a lot of fun to talk with you and for the opportunity to be here at the zoo. And we'll have you back on again soon.
Great.
All right. Thanks.